you. Yeah, I should be able to hear you. So if you have questions, feel free to shoot those out. So today we are covering the offer to purchase and contract, and we're going to start with the 2T. I am going to go through the 12T, which is the offer to purchase and contract vacant land. And time permitting, that should not take long because there's not a whole lot of differences between the two. And then time permitting, I will do new construction, offer to purchase for new construction. We don't use it very often, yet there are a couple of things when we do. And now I can see all of you out there. Maybe you can see me, I don't know. So couple of things that some of this might make sense, yet I'm saying it because it happens. You should type this form if at all possible. If you must write it, please write legibly and in ink. Just a reminder, any and every change on the offer to purchase and contract must be initialed and dated by all parties. If you're using DocuSign, then that takes care of it, or dotloop or any electronic signature, because it time date stamps it. And if you, my recommendation and the Real Estate Commission recommendation, if you have a whole lot of changes, might be better to just do a clean document. If it has been fully executed and you're going to do a clean document just to make it clean and have everybody sign a clean document, make sure you keep the first fully executed, because it's valid. We don't want to get in a situation where, one party says, oh, well, I'm not signing it now. Well, sorry, you already did. So just make sure that you don't get rid of that fully executed. And if we do a clean copy, it really is just for clarity, to make sure that there are no disputes between the two parties or confusion or anything like that. Well, I didn't initial that. I didn't initial that. DocuSign. Yeah. DocuSign is fine. Yes. So seller, fill in the complete name of all sellers. So this would be Pete Gladwell. Well, actually, it would be Pete's real name. And wife, Elizabeth Gladwell. Pete, I forgot your real name. Powell. I knew it was something that was a P, but yeah. So that's how it would be listed on there, not Mr. and Mrs. Gladwell, not Pete and Beth Gladwell. It needs to be their formal names. That can also be found on the deed as well. So if you have a question about what the names should be there, it's on the deed.
The question is, when you're selling a house that is for someone who died.
Yes.
And the heirs.
Yes.
You got to put all the heirs and their husbands on?
Yes. So great question. Immediately upon death, the property interest automatically goes to the heirs.
What if it's in a trust?
Okay, so trust is different. So if it's in a trust, then you name the trust as the seller, and then the trustee, as a human, signs on behalf of the trust. A human must always sign, even if it's for an entity or trust or anything like that. So they automatically, any heirs or devisees automatically become the property owners immediately upon death. So, and yes, so, and designated trustee. So yeah, that's what I was getting to. So all heirs, devisees, and their spouses should be named as the seller. And then along with the executor and/or administrator of the estate. Does that answer that question? Okay.
What form would that be that listed all of the trustees? Would that be in tax records or?
So as far as, well,
whoever listed provide you that?
yes, so one of the heirs, whomever the heir is that has said, we want to sell, okay, I need everybody. That's correct, yes. Typically, the preferred thing is to get a copy of the will. If you're able to get a copy of the will, if they have a copy of the will, and they'll provide it for you, because that will very clearly state everyone's name and all of that. In some cases, you may have to use additional signatures addendum, which is absolutely fine. Just make sure that you reference every form that they are signing for. So if it's a listing agreement, it would be the listing, the RPODs, the mineral oil, gas, everything that is required within the listing. Same thing with the offer to purchase. You just need to notate on the additional signatures addendum what forms that signature addendum covers.
Typically, the trustees already have an attorney picked out, or does it go, or it could vary?
It could vary. Yeah, I mean, it depends if they have a will, if they don't have a will, if, you know, what stage of probate it might be in, if it has to go through probate, all of that process. So sellers would be the heirs. Buyer, same thing. List the buyers, their full names. Again, this is dependent on which side you're on, so we're going to cover both. Then we're going to describe the property. One thing, if the property will include a manufactured mobile home, then you would reference the attachment of the additional provisions addendum. The additional provisions addendum references the mobile home that's included, the manufactured home that is included in the sale. And same thing, will or will not include an off-site or separate septic lot. So if it's an off-site septic, most of the time those are two different parcels. And so you would want to make sure that that parcel with the off-site septic conveys with the property as well. Boat slips, we don't have a whole lot of those. Garage, parking space, storage unit. And it even tells you in this blue box right here, if it's a manufactured home or a septic lot, boat slip, blah, 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 are included, use the additional provisions addendum and attach it to the offer. So street address, going through as much information as you can fill out in this area is benefits the attorney when they're doing the title search. We want to make sure that we are identifying the correct property. The plat reference, lot block, that's like old tax, so we don't see that filled in as much. If it is in a subdivision or a condo, please put that. There may or may not be a plat. There's always a PIN. That's your tax ID number. And then deed book. Make sure that it's the most recent deed book and page, not from, I mean, if the property's been in the family for 50 years, then yes, you're going to get one of those that looks like it was the whole thing was handwritten, or, you know, Hunt and Peck on an old typewriter. But sometimes the deed changes. For example, I had one today, question about today, that the husband had signed a quitclaim deed. So he was releasing all of his rights to the property to the spouse. That needs to be the deed that's referenced because it's the most recent deed. The attorney will then trace back all of any previous deeds from there. Purchase price, US dollars, due diligence, and just check the box. We don't do cash, so you should never check cash. You can't make a copy of cash, the federal offense. So that's why we don't accept cash. If a buyer comes to you and says, here, I got this cash, great, run down to the Walgreens, get that in a money order for me and bring it back. So personal check.
What's it on the form if it's not legal?
I'm not saying that it's not legal. I mean, I guess it could be cash. Our office does not do cash for the reason that you can't make a copy of it. You can do cash, I guess, and just not make a copy of it, but I like yes, yeah, yes. We recommend official bank check, wire transfer, and we're seeing more and more electronic transfer. If it is an electronic transfer, make sure that you specify the payment service. Is it PayPal? Is it Cash App? Is it Venmo? Is it Zelle? What format are they using in order to do that electronic transfer for due diligence? Initial earnest money.
You can probably take a screenshot of that as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Then
Yes. Yeah. Any type of electronic. Yeah. Because you're going to get you just take a screenshot, you pull it up on your app, take a screenshot. That's your verification.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you have the one on your side where you sent it, that is your copy of your due diligence check for compliance. And then when the seller sends you a screenshot that they received it, that would qualify for your receipt of, yes. When they, because you send me money, it shows on your end that you sent it to me, and then I'm going to open it up and I'm going to be like, oh yeah, okay, I got this money, so I can screenshot where that's verification enough. Doesn't have to be signed if you have those two things. So just a initial earnest money deposit, if there is earnest money, just a reminder that that is made out to yes, somebody else, the escrow agent right here. That's who it would be made out to. So insert that there. If it changes, there's a form for that. Additional earnest money, just a note on this is that there is not an option for a personal check. So it must be official bank check, wire transfer, or electronic transfer, and it is time is of the essence. So just a reminder on that if you're doing additional earnest money.
you can do you can do, okay,
Yes.
initial, but you can't do additional.
Additional, correct, yes. And the reason being is because now we're after due diligence and we're probably closing pretty soon. And if we don't find out until 10 days that the check bounced, then we may have already closed and that check might have.
No escrow.
Karen,
We do not hold earnest money. That is correct. Yeah. No, we do not have an escrow account.
Karen? can you hear me?
Correct. Yes.
Karen?
Yes, Beth.
Oh, okay, I didn't know whether you could hear me. I'm just seeing that this is the July 2024 version. Is that the latest one?
On the offer to purchase, yes.
Okay, all right.
The listing agreement changed in January, but this is the, July was when the offer to purchase changed.
Okay, and while I've got you, I wanted to add, I couldn't get to talk. I didn't know what button to push, but back when you were talking about the additional signatures addendum, which is 3T, it looks to me that there's no, you just put the names of the people that are not going to sign and have them sign it, but there's nowhere to put the main signature person, is there, on that form?
So main signature person goes on the actual offer to purchase.
Yeah, but
So then they don't need to sign the additional.
okay, the main person doesn't sign the 3T.
That is correct. Yes. So
Okay.
that's a good point, Beth, because I did have one that had an additional signatures addendum, and everybody signed the additional signatures addendum, but nobody signed the actual offer to purchase. And so I had to send it back because somebody, at least one person needs to sign the offer to purchase itself. And then everybody else, of course, there's 2 lines, or you can squeeze as many as you can. And then everybody else signs the additional signatures addendum.
Yeah, okay. Well, the attorney that I've worked with when using additional signatures has said that he wants everybody to sign the listing agreement, and then he wants everybody, and then you can do the additional signatures addendum, and then he wants everybody to sign the offer to purchase.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's, if that's the way that that particular attorney wants it done, then just do it that way. It doesn't have to be done that
Okay.
way.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Oh, okay. So, balance of purchase price. This is top line of D minus any of these things to get this balance down here. So just a reminder, if things change, because sometimes I'll see where they've struck through the purchase price and everybody's initialed it, but they didn't make the change down at the bottom. So make sure that that bottom balance line is equals the purchase price minus any of these dollar amounts. And then again, everything has to be initialed. Make sure the balance is always equal to the purchase price minus any of these things that that may or may not have changed.
Sharon, what if we have they go through due diligence and they agree to reduce the price by $3,000 or $4,000?
Okay, question is, they go through due diligence and they agree to reduce the price by $3,000 or $4,000 based on things they found on the inspection, whatever the case may be. We would use agreement to amend.
Don't have to worry about this.
You do not, yes. Once this is fully executed, it is not changed at all from there.
It doesn't give you that bottom line, the balance line on the agreement to amend, it just amends the main purchase.
Correct.
So that's why I asked.
Yes, yes. Anything that can be amended on the offer to purchase is covered on the agreement to amend. Yes, yeah. So again, escrow agent, if there is earnest money, you can't put TBD or buyer's choice or anything like that. If there is initial earnest money, you have to name who is holding that money.
And Karen, before, we were having to put the closing attorney, whether there was earnest money or not.
No, you do not have to put the closing attorney. You only have to disclose who the escrow, typically they're the same.
Who's holding the money should go there. If it's a cash deal, no earnest money, does anything need to go there?
No.
Okay.
NA. Any blank that is not there, it's either none or NA. A lot of the, I'm not going to go read each one of these. Effective date, the date that the last one of buyer and seller has signed or initialed offer, or the final counter offer, if any, and such signing or initialing is communicated to the party making the offer or the counter offer. So communication, we always talk about it's signed and once it's communicated as well. Communicated can be text, phone call, email, carrier pigeon, any of the above. We know what due diligence is. We know what due diligence, what the due diligence fee is. The buyer has the right to terminate the contract for any or no reason during the due diligence period. The due diligence fee is non-refundable unless two things happen. You close and then you get it credited back, or if there's a material breach by the seller. So we've got our due diligence period. You have two options here. So it can be a date that you put in, the period beginning on the effective date and extending through 5 p.m. of a specific date. If the buyer is waiving due diligence, don't put NA. You would put today's date. So at 5 p.m., they're done. No, the due diligence is over. Or you can do, so it's one or the other, not both, specific date or number of days. Yes.
How do you count the day?
Days are calendar days.
After or on the day?
Day after everyone signs is day one.
Yes.
Okay, the day after his signature is day one.
Yes, day after signature. Effective date is today. Day one starts tomorrow. Yes. Calendar day. Yes. Yes. Right. Yes. So just make sure that you're factoring that in when you're putting the number of days. Cases in which you might put days versus a specific date is if the listing agent says, well, sometimes my sellers are hard to get in touch with, or they're on vacation and they're not going to be, whatever the case may be, you would want to put number of days as opposed to a date, because you don't want to lose any days because it took the seller 3 days to sign it. Make sense?
You only have a week due diligence.
And you lose, and
Week in it.
yeah, and you lose 3 days, then yes, now you've only got 4 days.
They're waiting for another offer.
Yeah, that
Honestly, I like to go, if I'm the buyer's agent, I'll go as long as possible, because if you think about, if you look at what all the due diligence incorporates, it includes loan approval.
yes.
So if you put a 2-week due diligence and you don't get a clear to close until 4 days before closing, well, there's no contingency on that anyway, but you're kind of screwed.
You like
See what I'm
30
saying?
days.
I like.
Well, and the other-
to A week before closing if I can, especially on a vacant property.
I think it, and I think it depends on a lot of factors. So if I want to write a strong offer because I might be in a multiple offer situation, I'm going to make that as short as possible. If it's cash, I'm going to make it as short as possible. If it's a loan, then I'm probably going to go 21 days unless you're dealing with State Employees Credit Union or Bank of America, just because they are slow in response. And then, because most lenders, like if you're working with Tim or Movement or anybody like that, within 21 days, they're going to be able to tell you whether they can get the loan or not. And the other thing about it is if there's no earnest money, then it doesn't make any difference anyway, because they're not getting that due diligence money back, irregardless of what time frame it is. If it is before or after due diligence, they're not getting the money back if they don't go to close. So if there's no earnest money, then there's less skin in the game. And so you might have a little more negotiating power with the due diligence time period. Strategery. That's our new word that we made up today. And then settlement date, just keep in mind, read the difference between closing and settlement date, because those two are different. Closing is all of the things that have to happen in order to get to settlement date. So it's a process. Closing is a process. Settlement date is the date that we are all going to sit down or not, and the attorney is going to record the deed, and everybody's going to get their money.
Well, that's, closing is actually incorporates and includes the recording of the deed.
Yes,
Hey, Karen.
right. Yes, Beth?
On this settlement date, there's that line where you fill it in.
Uh-huh.
Does that just allow you to put an actual date, or can you put like 14 days after due diligence ends?
Yes, you can. You can put X number of days after due diligence, or you can, so long as both parties agree to it.
Okay, so you don't just have to use that date block thing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
There's a settlement date. That's when everybody comes together and does the signing, and then they go to record, which is.
And they can't record at the Register of Deeds after 4:30. So,
Don't ever have that 3:11.
I would, yeah, if it's on a Friday, if your buyer wants to get in on the weekend,
two different places, the attorney's office and then.
No,
the attorney's office.
the attorney's office records. Yeah, and they electronically record. Yeah, yes. Yes, yes. All right, fixtures. All of these things remain. So when you're going through the listing agreement, we want to make sure that the seller understands that all of these things remain. So unless otherwise agreed upon. So if the Ring doorbell is not going to stay with the property, it needs to show as a fixture exclusion. And you would need to either put in agent remarks or something to let other agents know that it is a fixture exclusion.
If that happens on my listing appointment, I suggest that you go ahead.
Yeah, for sure.
Then there's no question.
So the other thing that I see too is like people will cross out. So if it doesn't have a basketball goal, the agent will cross through it. You don't need to do that. It only remains if it's there. If it's not there, you don't have to cross them out.
I say, when I get to this part, I just say, so Mr. and Miss Seller or buyer, these things in this categories here are all considered fixtures.
They stay.
and they would stay if they are at the property, if they are part of the property. If not, we don't need to worry about it. It's, not applicable. That's the way I explain it.
Yes,
You want to grab one Shandy or take that?
yes,
Yep.
exactly. Just a reminder, that you want to make sure that you're going over with your seller as well, is that, they must unpair, any device that conveys. This would include, and they have either go back to factory settings or delete the device altogether, whether it's on your smartphone, whether it's on your iPad, whether it is programmed into your car to where you hit the button and your garage door opens. All of those have to be unpaired. It is, and that is one of the few things that survives closing, because it is a federal offense to the seller if they do not unpair and then they come back at a later time and use that device to enter the property or anything like that. So just making sure, that they are, unpaired. What was my next thing I wanted to talk about?
Looks like they put in there something about keys in there. I mean,
Yeah.
That there should be no outstanding keys,
Yes,
which is the main thing.
right, right. Items leased or not owned by the seller. Again, these, antennas, satellite dishes, receivers, appliances, alarm and security, identified and shall not convey, because the seller doesn't own it. The seller can't convey something that they don't own. And then, other items that do not convey, this would be any of these things right here that do not convey and agreed upon by both parties.
So even if it's listed one way in the listing agreement.
They
it's
still have
gotta
to
be
ask
here-
for it.
It's gotta be here to make.
You got it. Yes, yes.
A lot of people take that an assumption that the refrigerator is showing that it stays, but they didn't include it on the offer. See, if I get that, I'm assuming that they did not want the refrigerator,
Correct.
because they didn't ask.
Yes,
And
that is correct. Yes.
In the last year, I had a buyer's agent who did that. They did not include the refrigerator on the offer to purchase. And they claimed that they had it, that we had it in MLS, that it remains. It says it right there. However, because they didn't, and we won the argument, because they didn't put it in the offer to purchase, matter of fact, I think they bought a refrigerator.
Yeah.
A
MLS,
very big house.
MLS, information deemed accurate, but not guaranteed. So, and again, same thing. I mean, I had a listing and I mean, they had a old jacked up refrigerator in the kitchen. And the buyer ended up, I mean, they wanted it because they were going to move it out into the garage and, you know, who cares what a garage refrigerator looks like. But, you know, same thing. Yeah. And to your point, Pete, yes. So if when the buyer wrote the offer and they did not include, even though we had said in MLS comments that the refrigerator was included, if they did not put personal property, then they would have had to have moved it out. And no space there where the refrigerator would have been.
If it's a really nice refrigerator, I always put it at the time of showing.
Yes, absolutely. And you can even get to the point that you take a picture of it. And there is an app that you can do time, date stamped photographs. It's a free app. It's called, I don't,
Mine date stamps it, well, it shows when it was done.
right.
It doesn't stamp it on the photo itself. On my Android, but Another thing you can do, not just take a picture of the outside of it, most of your newer refrigerators have the manufacturer's plate on the inside of the refrigerator. You take that, that way you've got the serial number, the model number, everything.
That's a good idea.
Yes, so the app is free and it's called Photo Timestamp. So,
They try to pass it,
photo, PHO,
call
yeah.
it beer refrigerator, I thought,
Oh, oh.
as a substitute. Well, it was a refrigerator. You asked for a refrigerator.
Yeah. Yeah,
Now, if my seller says, hey, I really don't want to have to move that washer and dryer or that refrigerator, can we check again and just make sure that they don't want it? And so I've done that, but.
Yes.
In the one situation, the sellers decided that they had a place for the refrigerator, so they took it.
Yeah.
And then they were upset at the walkthrough that there was no refrigerator.
So personal property, again, this is anything not included in the list of fixtures. This would be any curtains, draperies, refrigerator, countertop microwave, not built in, a window air conditioner. That's a big one that gets forgotten sometimes. Correct. Yes. If you're asking for the TV, yes. And again, here, when you are including personal property, make sure that you ask the question, the seller owns this, correct? It's not leased. Buyer due diligence process, the Real Estate Commission did a really good job of anything that is a big deal, they put it in bold and they outlined it. They put it in a colored box. So those are things that you definitely need to make sure that you are reviewing with your client. Just a reminder, if the, so we talked about due diligence fee, the only time that it is, it's either breach or closing. It's the only two times that a buyer gets the due diligence money back. And the breach must be proven in court. It can't just be, well, we feel like the seller breached or we think the seller breached. Okay, but we are not attorneys. So a material breach is still going to have to be something that we are not able to do at our level. If they close, they get their money. Again, just a note, there is no loan or appraisal contingency in the offer to purchase. So appraising at or equal to the purchase price is not a condition to the buyer's performance under the contract unless it's an FHA or VA loan. And there's an addendum for that. So here we talk about all of these inspections, review of documents, insurance, make sure that you can afford insurance on the property and obtain insurance on the property. Just, knob and tube, a lot of insurance companies won't provide a policy if it has knob and tube wiring. Same thing with flood insurance to consider. Survey. Interesting thing about a survey. I read this because we always encourage our buyers to get a survey. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We should. A lot of times the lender will say, oh, you don't need to get a survey. Yes. Well, because it's an additional expense. for the buyer. So this what, yeah, so this is what, this was what I read on it. Lenders often tell buyers that they do not need a survey in order to close, which is true. That's because lenders are able to obtain title insurance coverage on their lender's policy, insuring against title defects, which would be revealed by a survey. No such coverage is available to a buyer or borrower under an owner's policy of title insurance. In order to obtain title insurance coverage against defects which would be revealed by a current survey of the property, buyers should be encouraged to go to the expense of obtaining a new survey. So I thought that was interesting, and maybe changes your mind on how much you're encouraging a survey.
Well, I've said it all the time. I just learn something about every day in this business, and I just learned something. I didn't realize that the lender actually does have that survey coverage.
Right, but the owner does
where
not.
the-
Correct.
How much does that cost to get through the legislature?
Yeah, what lenders learn that in their pocket.
Yeah,
So if you buy a piece of property, you think it's 10 acres and it's 8. That doesn't affect the value?
well, I mean, of course it affects the value, but the whole thing about it is that you have a title insurance policy that only covers 8 acres of your property, not 10 acres of your property.
Care because they get sued.
Right.
It's covered by something.
Yeah.
Still. Right.
Their policy, they're covered for the full 10. That's the biggest thing. Fence, encroachment with driveways, storage buildings, that sort of thing. Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
I got a question. It's a pet peeve. There's a lot of advice in here has nothing to do with the contract.
Yes.
Why can't they do an advice addendum that they sign off and say, I've signed this like they do, I have to do with Apple every time I do something? And have an advice addendum and just make the dadgum contract, the contract, and make it 5 pages instead of 17 and 12 pages of advice.
Yes, so because we as agents should be explaining this to our client. If there's an additional piece of paper that has all of the explanations and this one just has all the boxes, then you just fill in all the boxes and all the blanks and, oh, I need for you to sign this form too. So the agent still is not explaining it.
What if you had a separate addendum that explains all this advice that I have to, the buyer has to sign?
You have to sign saying that
that
you,
I read it, or
that you
my
rec-
agent explained it to me.
or that you received it. So it's kind of like the WWREA. You're signing saying, I gave this to you, not that you understand it.
Right.
Makes sense? Yeah. So, but again, Pete, I don't disagree. Flood. Again, FEMA.gov is where you go to determine, is it in a floodplain? There's a reason that in compliance, you are required on the listing side because it's a material fact and it's a disclosure, and on the under contract side because you should be discovering, that's part of discovery for your buyer, is it located in a floodplain? So that is why it is a required document. Buyer's obligation to repair damage. So this means that if the home inspector falls through the ceiling, the buyer or the home inspector has to pay to make that repair. If the home inspector has their ladder up against the side of the house and the ladder slides out and damages the siding to the side of the house, the inspector or the buyer has to pay for that. What it does not mean is that if the inspector is underneath the house and they jab their screwdriver into a floor joist, which they are going to do, and it discovers rotten wood or termites, they do not have to repair that. because there was an underlying damage that was there. And that repair obligation survives any termination. So doesn't matter if you terminate or not, it doesn't get you out of it.
Just for giggles,
Yeah.
what percentage of offers to purchase are signed electronically?
I would say probably about 85% of what I see.
I guarantee you they didn't read any of that stuff.
Oh, no, of course they didn't. Yeah.
Karen, what was that? The question?
Oh, Pete asked the question, what percentage of contracts are digitally, electronically signed? And I said about 85% of the ones that I see are electronically signed. Okay, so buyer representation, these are things that aren't necessarily contingent to the offer. What this is, buyer representation is the buyer is telling the seller essentially what their ability is to close on the property. So if it's cash, it's cash. We want to see proof of funds. Being able to, it is a material fact whether the buyer is able to fully close on the property. And this is also information that the seller is relying upon, whether they want to consider the offer or not. So cash, loan, again, doesn't mean that the loan can't change. The loan can change. It's just, this is what we started with. They do or do not have to sell. Please be honest here.
Question,
Yes.
go back. Yeah. Up there in the first block, well, that's cash.
Yeah.
Let's say they're putting down 50% cash.
Okay.
Is
So their loan amount. So then for
50%.
correct.
Prove to me you got $205,000 in the bank account.
That's for
You can ask.
But it's not on the form anymore.
Right, but when you ask for a pre-approval letter or pre-qualification letter, if it's a loan, right,
And so it's on them to have
to
gotten proof from the person they're gonna lend it to that they have $205,000.
that's correct,
Okay.
yes. So, I mean, or the other thing too is that you can ask for proof of funds as well. Typically on the pre-approval, it's going to say, this is what the loan amount is, this is what the purchase price is, and this is what the loan amount is. So the lender has verified that they have those funds. But again, you can also ask for proof of funds to cover any difference.
I just thought it was interesting that they make a point of saying the cash is available in the first option of whether it's attached or not, but they don't do the same thing for cash, which could be a sizable amount in the second thing.
Sure, yeah,
I'm not saying add something else.
yeah.
So we just had a similar situation on that $1.1 million log home we sold in January, where they were putting 40% down. We asked for a proof of funds, and the buyer didn't have a problem providing it at all. The ones that don't have it, they have a problem with providing it.
Well, you can bring it back.
I guess showed you on my phone, so anyway.
So again, it's a material fact if the buyer has to get a loan for the property. And it must be disclosed because it could affect the seller. So just like the seller has to disclose on the residential property disclosure, any defect that might affect the buyer's decision to buy, same thing here. This has to be disclosed. The ability to obtain a loan has to be disclosed so that the seller can make a decision, an educated decision on whether they want to accept this loan or not, accept this contract or not. So, okay, so here we have, they either do or do not have to sell. You would put the property address here. If it's under contract already, you check this. If it is not under contract, then it either is listed, will be listed, or they are trying to do a for sale by owner. Again, this very material to a seller as to whether or not they would accept this offer. It doesn't make it conditional. It's just disclosure. It's buyer representation. It is not a contingency. We do not have a contingent offer to purchase any longer. We used to, yes. Yes. Yes, we did.
It'll be clear days, sorry.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of stuff before that.
Which is
Believe-
not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, residential property, owner's disclosure statement, they either have or they have not received it. If they have, then it's signed by the buyer and it's loaded into your file. If they've not, then the listing agent has 3 days for the buyer to get it to you for the buyer to review, or they can unilaterally terminate the contract.
Question about that, Karen. There's some exemptions.
There are exemptions. I'm getting ready to go through them. Okay. Or it's exempt. So conditions where ARPODES is exempt. So we have court-ordered transfer. So if it's a court-ordered sale, the commissioner is the owner or the seller of the property. If it is a borrower to lender transfer, that would be a deed in lieu of foreclosure, not required. Fiduciary transfer, co-owner to co-owner transfer, within family transfer, spouse to spouse divorce decree transfer, tax sale, governmental transfer, first sale of dwelling never inhabited, new construction, lease with option to purchase.
You have to tell your ex-wife that the water heater don't get blown out.
Yeah.
Now, she would, when she goes to sell it. If it was still, well, even if, see, that's another thing I don't get about in new law codes and what we've been told is anything that's even in the past that has happened has to go in the law code.
Yeah.
It used to be, or the way we understood it years ago was that if it's currently having an issue.
Yes. Yes,
Remedy things like that.
right.
Used to not have to be.
You do
Um,
not have to.
It can also be exempt by buyer and seller agreement. So if the buyer and seller say, meh, I don't care, I don't need to see it, then that would be your exemption. And then property to be transferred consists of less than 1 or more than 4 residential units, meaning it's vacant land or it's 5 or more units. Did you have any additional questions on that?
Heirs
Okay.
transferred automatically. Now, do the heirs are they responsible to fill out the RFS?
So they would be, they can select no representation because they've never lived in the property. Right. Yep, no representation. Yeah.
No, you just have NR on all of the.
Yeah.
sections on-
No representation. Yeah. I'm not saying yes or I'm not saying no because I probably don't know. But if I do know, I'm still not telling you, is essentially what no representation means.
Regardless whether we know it or not, we have.
Yes, if we discover it, then we have to. All right, let me pick it up
Our
here.
due diligence as agents really become more technical over the years.
For sure.
Just permitting alone.
Yes,
I mean, really, if the seller says, I don't know, well, if you know there's been an addition to the property, you might want to do some due diligence and check. Make sure that if it was permitted or not.
It's usually if the tax record doesn't match
If
the
they
measuring
not.
record.
that's right.
well, again, I think it goes back to asking questions. Okay, seller representations. This is what the seller has to do. How long have they owned the property? Do they not yet own the property? Lead-based paint, that's a disclosure, that is an attachment. Owners Association and dues. If there are, let's disclose them here. Fuel tanks, same thing. They're either, and this should never be blank. I see a lot of them that there's just nothing on here. It either is or it isn't.
And if there's not, we don't have to do anything else with the rest.
If there is not, then you're done. But you just got to check and say there is not. If there is, then a little additional information that you need to fill out there.
Same thing, the liens and HOA, right? If yes, there is or is not, and that's all you have to do if there is not. If
Right.
there is, then you fill it out.
Yes, yes. This came up recently, and so I just wanted to point it out. This is different than it used to be, but probably not different, other than Mike, not different for any of you in the room. So if there is a fuel tank, the tank is included in the sale, and that it's owned by the seller. If it's leased, then you just say that it's leased. Typically, but you got to say who it's leased by. So if it's leased by Payne Oil, then that allows the buyer to then contact Payne Oil to continue the service on it. Or call Payne Oil and say, come pick up your tank. I want to do service with another company. So it's included, no liens, unless it is indicated above. Thanks, Daniel. Fuel that's in the tank. Seller may use the fuel in the tanks described above through settlement, but may not otherwise remove the fuel or resell it. Any fuel remaining in the tank as of settlement shall be included in the sale as part of the purchase price, free of liens. So we had one come up this week that it was an old school agent, and they created an invoice for $500 to the buyer for the fuel that was in the propane tank. And so I went back and I was like, the agent was like, can they do that? I'm like, no. And so I showed him. So interesting thing, the agent highlighted this section, sent it back to the agent and said, after meeting with Karen, and so the agent actually came back and was like, well, isn't Karen just on top of it as always? I should have known that. Tell her thank you for catching it, so. It used to be, yes, yes, it used to be, that is correct. Yes, yes,
Filling these tanks up, or they were having them filled on a periodic basis and not knowing that they're coming. And all of a sudden they got a full tank and they're closing the next day.
right.
And so they wanted to reach.
Yes, yeah, and it just got to where you couldn't, oh, can you come out on this day and do a reading? Well, then closing got extended 5 days, and now the buyer's like, well, I'm not paying for 5 days of you using, and so it's with, yeah, much,
Paint company, I talked to one time, they said it's actually dangerous for them to pull that
to
back.
pull it back out, yes,
Not safe for them to do that. So that's part of the reason why it's that way, from what I was told.
yes,
Question on that.
uh-huh,
We're getting ready to list a house that has a fuel tank.
mm-hmm,
We have no idea of whether anything is in it or not,
mm-hmm,
or whether it's dirty or not,
Mhm.
or whether. But that's not addressed up here.
unknown.
What type of fuel? I mean, and I'm just.
Yeah.
Oil.
Okay, so, like I have one on, my property on South Mebane. I don't know what it is. The only reason that I disclose that there is a UST is because I saw the pipe sticking out of the ground. I have no idea what was in there, if there's anything still in there, and so, no.
Buyer can have it tested. And if they find contamination, trust me, it'll be remediated.
Yes. And the state does not assist with that any longer.
Find that the soil is contaminated from leakage, then typically the EPA is gonna get involved. Because those reports of leak, don't they have to turn those into EPA?
Yes.
Yes.
We have to turn them into account.
If somebody found that was the case, yeah. So, I just had one on Maple Street in Graham. We didn't even discover it. The guys doing the foundation work, drilling a helical pier under the foundation, discovered that there was an underground oil tank. They drilled right beside it. And so I went out to look at it. I opened the lid, I could see down in it, and I got a reflection. So I know there's something in there, but it wasn't much. It was way down in the bottom of the tank.
It would need to be remediated.
What'd you look like?
All I saw was a reflection, so I couldn't really look like me. That's what it looked like. Or at least part of me.
So, governmental compliance. So just a reminder on this, it is the buyer's burden to discover any non-compliance with government regulations. Deeds and taxes. So it's okay to leave this blank. The only time that you would put something in here is if the buyer's names on page 1 are different than who the deed is to be made out to.
Same space.
Well, no, because that could create confusion. Same as page 1.
Same
No,
as page 1.
Just don't put anything. If it's not different from page 1, leave it blank. Because it says insert names only, but if you put same as page 1, well, how do I know that you don't have an LLC that's called same as page 1?
Karen,
No, it addresses assignment. This is where you would, if you were assigning it, this is where you would put that's correct. Yes.
Buying it, they have to put their name only on page 1, but it's gonna be deeded to both. For them both.
Yes.
What if at some point they were gonna put it in a trust, but the trust wasn't ready yet?
Then that has to be deeded to them and then they can then they can deed it to the trust.
Have to get it by signature change though.
Well, that would all be the attorney. We would not do, we wouldn't, if it's not ready to go into the trust, then it has to close in their name, and then they deal with the attorney to put, put it, to deed it to the trust
And then
at a later date.
By the time you get to closing, but if it's not at the time of the offer, you have to put it in the name of the person. Not the LLC or trust or whatever. it is.
Sometimes they need signature revision. If the names decide they're gonna put it in a trust, then they have to go back to the seller and say, we need you to sign up.
Not if it's already closed.
If you get the trust set up prior to the closing, I would imagine they
It will
will
go
handle
in
that
the
at
trust
closing.
name. Yeah.
At the settlement?
Yeah, yes. But they can still, you can still leave this blank. And if the trust is ready before closing, then you just instruct the attorney how to make the deed out. The seller doesn't get to decide how the buyer wants their deed made out. So it's nothing the seller has to sign off on. You would just instruct the closing attorney how to draft the deed.
Typically, it is-
If they change the name on that contract, you have to get a name signature addendum.
Yep,
Can be a problem
yep.
with some people.
Karen,
Agreement to pay, Beth, did you have a question?
on that one, if the buyer, say Pete was buying a house, just in his name, but we wanted both our names on the deed, wouldn't you put both our names in this blank, right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Buyer expenses, this is a fixed dollar amount, or it can also be a percentage. A seller shall pay any charges by an owners association or management company. So a lot of times what you're seeing is there are transfer fees for the HOA from the seller to the new buyer. It's the seller's responsibility to pay those.
And honestly, it's a good thing there is an HOA involved to make sure that they understand that right there. Because I've been in several situations that I did not explain it thoroughly. And all of a sudden, they've got this additional $300 or $350 charge from the HOA company
You have to
that
make the buyer sign, saying that they understand if there's a homeowner's fee of $300 a month.
the buyer wouldn't necessarily know that until they go to sell. And it could be that that fee changes by the time they go to sell. But
Right.
the current owner.
The
in a lot of
Service.
cases,
the transfer fee,
I didn't explain it, and the seller was mad at me because he wasn't aware that there was another $350 charge from this HOA company.
I'm talking like the
Just-
monthly HOA.
No, just this, they charge a fee to transfer it from this owner to
Yeah.
this owner.
so number 9 talks,
Right now, that's 200 on the side.
yeah. Yeah,
But that's illegal, according to the contract.
That's just their transfer fee?
200 for the buyer, 200 for the seller, 400 total.
I had one that closed last year and it was 500. I think they switched management companies. It was 500 then. So number 9 on page 11 clearly defines what this charges by owners association, what the seller shall pay, and what the buyer shall pay. Prorations, we know prorations, condition of property must be in the same or better condition at time of closing, reasonable wear and tear, accepted, or buyer may terminate the contract. Tree falls in the middle of the house, then the buyer can say, I'm not buying this. And then they will get their due diligence monies back.
This is the third.
Yeah, technically. Right. Delay in settlement, 7 days, including any amended settlement date. After 7 days, the non-delaying party may terminate unilaterally. So this is a time when the seller can unilaterally terminate the contract. This is one of the few times that the seller can unilaterally terminate the contract. Right.
Is there
Form 4.
for delay in settlement, to establish who's delaying it?
Well, there's not a form, there is, on the agreement to amend, there's an extension of settlement, or you can move settlement up, change in closing date, change in settlement date. You're gonna know, in the transaction, you're gonna know who who the delaying party is and who the non-delaying party is. It's gonna be evident. Either the buyer, lenders dragging their feet, they can't get the loan, whatever else. Or the seller is like, holy crap, we figured out we can't convey marketable title. We're trying to fix it. And so one person's trying, the other person is not. The person that is not trying is the delaying party.
What's something that used to be, if you extended it once, the second time is, first time is 7 days, the next time is 4 days.
You can check the box that says on the extension, if you check the box that says it's 4 days. Yes. Yeah. Addenda, this is where you reference any addenda that is attached, or any attorney or party drafted addenda. So the buyer or the seller can draft addenda. We, as their agent, cannot, or an attorney can. Is not an addenda. That is correct. We are not a party.
And they even put in, on that line, as a part of this offer. I was like, look, time out.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we struggled last week.
number 23 are remedies of breach by the buyer and breach by the seller. Make sure that you read through those. I was also going to cover vacant land. Not a whole lot of difference there, just really disclosures on utilities, well, septic, that sort of thing. Other than that, it's pretty, they mirror each other pretty well. One thing I will say on here, confirmation of agency and notice addresses. If Mike, well, it's disclosure. We have to disclose.
Get that. But every single transaction, it can have every bit of that filled out and we still get these stupid seller information sheets from the attorneys.
Oh, well,
Asking for this information, and if you don't include it on that sheet and say that it's on here, they send you back the sheet and say, fill it out anyway. It drives me nuts.
yeah, well, that's on the attorney side.
I'm-
So if,
Hard for me to check.
that's exactly what I was gonna go over. So if Pete has a listing and Mike has a buyer, which box are we checking here? Dual agent. That is correct. Yes. Firm license number, mailing address. And then we put Mike's name here. And then do we check this box? In most cases,
In my cases, I am.
yes.
However, we may have to ask the question,
When you put your name on both sides then?
no,
No.
what would happen is if, let's say we both are doing, we will.
If you're doing, it's an unrepresented buyer is essentially what it is.
Say,
Yes. Unrepresented buyer on,
a buyer that said I could be a dual agent,
That's what I'm saying. You did, in that case, you'd have,
not designated.
then you're going to have to do the dual designated addendum because Pete checked dual designated on his listing agreement.
Correct. Now, absolutely. But if they both say dual, We don't have to do anything here, other than the dual agent at the top, correct? Under the firm name.
Yes. However, we are teaching that we also initial
situation.
at dual designated on the listing agreement or on the buyer agency agreement, so that you don't have to go back at a later time and get that done. I've got a situation like that right now. And you're exactly right. The agent initialed at allows firm to practice as a dual agent. The other one allows firm to practice as a dual agent and designated, which means I had to go back to this one to say, you need to have them initial at designated. Well, quit stirring the pot. So both would check acting as designated dual. Make sure you put your license number on here. That is a disclosure. Yes, yes, yes. And a lot of it is on the MLS sheet as well. A lot of times I see initials missed on page 16. So yeah, they did. They added it. Yes, because it became a disclosure. And so because you don't sign, they don't initial page 17. And so a lot of people are like at the end of 15, oh, we're done. We don't have any more. Yeah, they have to initial this one. Any questions? I apologize that we have run over. Any questions for me when we wrap this up?
I have one more about vacant land. There's a new vacant land disclosure. Is it required with the vacant land listing?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
because vacant land was exempt at one point.
It's exempt from the RPODs, but this addresses the vacant land more of, again, water, utilities, that sort of thing. Yes.
Last question.
Yes.
What mistake did we use there?
On which form?
That's cold.
And which-
So cold.
Which page do you want to go back to?
Yeah. Yeah, it depends. I'm seeing a lot of, one of the things that I'm working on is going through all of these forms and doing a mock-up on every single form. And this is what you want to put in here, and this is why. And so when you go into command, so like right now, you go into command and sometimes there's a DS emblem where that you click on that and it takes you to the DocuSign. So we're going to add another icon there that is going to say sample form. And so you'll be able to click on the sample form, because I have a lot of people asking about the listing agreement, particularly about the compensation section of the listing agreement. So I've created a mock-up and we're going to load those in command to where, wait, how was I supposed to do that? And it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm not texting Karen because she's not going to answer. And, or it's all right. So you can click on, it's like a Cliff Notes version. You'll be able to click on that form. It'll take you to the link of that form and it'll show you this is how you properly fill out the form.
Not that I like that.
Yeah. Yes. What? That's not going to be in DocuSign. You'll have, so when you go into command, you'll have access to it irregardless of what, irregardless of what, it's not going to be tied to DocuSign. It's going to be loaded directly into command as a PDF. Yes. Any other questions for me, Zoomers?
No, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.